This is the last podcast episode of 2023. I forgot how frustrating it is to record when I'm home because somehow, seriously, every time I choose to record, which is maybe 5 minutes a day, just any random time in the day, I just choose to record, I always get interrupted. Every time. And it's one of my biggest pet peeves. I cannot stand it. Like, obviously I'm going to go on a little rant. Obviously, my family knows I'm recording because they can hear me talking to myself. And still, they think they could just walk in, do whatever they need to do, cough a little bit. And it just... Anyways, this is my third take. Like I said, very last podcast episode of 2023. It hasn't hit me yet that the year is ending so soon, so I'll cross that bridge whenever it comes. And the next episode that you'll see is on the 1st of 2024. With that being said, last high-low buffalo of 2023. So my high, this is actually like super weird recording this episode, and it's kind of full circle to be recording it in my home, my bedroom, where I started the Heart to Heart series. And it's also kind of weird because I just haven't recorded a podcast here in a really long time and I feel kind of awkward about it, but whatever. My high. So whenever I come home, there's two things I really, really look forward to. And the first one is pretty self-explanatory, which is the beach, because California beaches are nothing in comparison to East Coast beaches. It is like the thing here to do, to see in California. And I just happen to be super duper lucky because I live in a beach city. And so the beach is literally 5 minutes away from me. And I'm always able to get to it like I would a supermarket, which is insane and super amazing. But the other thing that I love, if you don't live in Manhattan, then you might not know this, but the skyscrapers are just everywhere and so high that it's really hard to catch a good sunset or sunrise. But here in California, because there's like not a lot of things obstructing your view, it's insane. Like the entire sky just turns pink, purple, orange, yellows. Even if I'm stuck in traffic, in LA traffic, which is so annoying. Even if I'm stuck in it and I get to see a sunrise, I'm like super happy. So it's been really nice to see that here. So next is my low. So the day that I came home, the night I came home, I swear to God I died. I reincarnated and now I'm here as the reincarnated version of myself because I got so sick that night, which is really, really weird. I was already sick coming home, but I thought I was fine. Like I really just had a runny nose and a cough. But that night I went to sleep, guys. I could not keep any of my food down. I woke up like 3 or 4 times in the middle of the night and I was just so sick. And I am someone who just happens to have a really, really sensitive stomach. And so even though my pain tolerance, I would say, is pretty high, my stomach pains are like no other. I swear to God. And I was legit in fetal position at least 5 times in the night. Like I was in fetal position on the floor in front of my toilet because I literally could not get up. I couldn't get up. I couldn't figure out what my stomach needed. Like I couldn't throw up or shit. And I was just like, I need to lay down. Like I cannot do anything. And then I woke up at like 5-ish to go to the gym as I always do. And I felt fine. So I was like, I'm going to go to the gym. And I fully like get up, brush my teeth. And as I'm like changing my clothes, like I start getting a huge headache. My vision starts blurring and it's like starting to get darker. And I'm like, I'm literally going to faint right now. And so I literally blacked out at like 5:30 in the morning, getting ready to go to the gym. And that was my low. It was insane. I swear I died that night. And for my buffalo, the weird thing, and it is related to the low, which is, I think I just started, like, I developed IBS, which is irritable bowel syndrome. It's a pretty like common syndrome. It literally just means like your stomach is so sensitive that when you eat stuff, you just have to like shit it out, or you get an upset stomach and it doesn't sit well, like anything that you eat. And that has been happening ever since that night. It's been happening like on and off before that night, but like ever since the night I got back, everything that I eat, nothing wants to stay in my stomach. It's been weird. I think that's what I have. It is definitely self-diagnosed. I haven't gotten checked up, but it's been extremely consistent. Every single meal without a fail has made me very sick. I don't know. But anyways, the last episode of this year is a pretty serious, deeper one. I always go on and off, switching back and forth between like lighter ones and serious ones. And this one just happens to be a serious one, which I'm surprised I haven't done yet. And I've kind of touched on a few of these like topics and things that I'm going to speak about in this podcast, but I'm surprised I haven't done like a fully dedicated episode on being more independent, being less dependent on others, just because I feel it's just been such a natural thing for me. It's probably like the one skill I could confidently and will not be afraid to tell everyone that is very strong in me. I would strongly say that I've honed in on the skill to the point where it's a little bit too extreme, which I'll get into in a little bit. But yeah, I'm excited to do this one. I know a lot about being independent and not dependent on others, and especially more so since I've moved out of home and moved across the country. So before I get into how to actually be more independent, less dependent on others, I'm just going to talk about why it's even important, or why you should even give a crap in the first place. And I think, at least for me, and I'm only really speaking on my own experience and how I feel about it, but it really has helped with my sense of self, being independent and making my own decisions, feeling at least like I have a little bit more control over my day, my whatever I wear, like things that I do with my money, whatever it is, how I spend my time, and not having to rely on other people to make those decisions, or not allowing people to influence those decisions that I make. It really makes me feel like I am my own person. And it is super duper important for me that, and this is kind of related, I'm going to get all over the place. This is going to be a really long, rambly episode. I think it's because I'm home, so I haven't had many conversations like this with like friends, or like I just haven't had time to like talk about this stuff. So I'm like processing it and also just want to talk about it. So, but even when I'm home, for example, I realize that I lose a huge chunk of my independence and my sense of self, which drives me crazy, which is why I love being home, because of the people that I'm surrounded with, the energy of a suburban beachy town. Like, it's great. But like what drives me really crazy here is that I don't get to really dictate my life as much, because I'm living under my parents' roof. So what I wear is controlled. How I spend my day is controlled. Where I can go is controlled. Even little things like what I eat, I can't even control that. It doesn't make sense for me to, because obviously my parents are going to cook for my entire family, and why would I go off and make my own thing? Because a huge chunk of that independence is taken away from me, and also I choose to give up the independence, I feel crazy over here. Like, I feel like not myself anymore, and I feel like I just end up being more influenced by everybody else, and I just feel having that sense of self is just so like comforting, because you know that no matter what happens to you externally, whether someone's there for you or not, or whether you're the last person on this earth, like, you're going to be just fine. having that as a baseline, as a foundation, whenever you go or approach anything in life, it's just so like stable and so like comforting. I don't know how to explain it. It's just like feels like you're always constantly like shielded in a way, because that shield that you have around yourself is built by you and it's supported by you. So it will never really falter unless you choose to let it. And the other thing is that everything exists on a spectrum. And if you ever end up on very, very extreme sides of that spectrum, it is pretty questionable. So if you're in the place of being very dependent on people, things, a job, that can be concerning, because sometimes you get to that extreme without even realizing that you're there, or without even realizing that it's unhealthy. And so if you're in the place and you're listening to this episode and you're like, ooh, I think I'm leaning more towards that side, it's fine. But if you're like, oh shit, I'm like really deep in on that side, that's when you want to like reel it back in and be more towards like the center. That's a much more healthier place to be in general for anything. Like eating too much of one thing is not good. Doing too much of one thing, thinking too much at all is not good. So it's just like too much of anything is not good. So this is a episode also for the people who are realizing, whoa, I'm at an extreme, and now a lot of my life is being controlled by other people and external things that I don't actually have control over because they're outside of me. You know, this is for you. Getting into what you actually need to do in order to be more independent and less dependent, attached to others and things. And the first is something that you really cannot skip. It's like pretty common sense. If once I say it, you're going to be like, duh, like that's what I'm supposed to do. Like everyone says it. But the question is, have you done it to the extent? Have you given it its due diligence? Because if you have, then great, then you can skip it. But if you haven't, or if you're even questioning it, then you know you haven't. And it is observing and documenting just how you feel and how you've gone through life. So basically journaling. Once you start observing and really documenting this for a long while and very like meticulously, you can start to accept that that's just how you are and that's who you are. So when I do a lot of my journal entries, I'm not just like ranting about things or being very emotional. I actually document a lot of things that happen to me or that are significant or like weird, or even little things that happen to me and little thoughts that I have in my head. And parts of the journaling entry itself are usually what happens to me externally. So I'm like telling like XYZ happened. And then how I reacted / what I thought in my head, the thoughts. And then at the end, usually what I actually did. And then the external thing that happened back in response to what I did. And it's really important to break those things up, because every single part of that storytelling is something that you can learn about yourself. So the fact that you internalize and thought certain things as something is happening to you, like those thoughts are completely valid. And it's also interesting to see how you reacted internally, and then also what you did, whether it aligns with what you wanted to do in your head, or whether or not it was completely different because of external factors. And so I like to journal these things down. And whether it is embarrassing, super cool, badass, or just, cringe, terrible, horrible things that I thought of. Some examples, like if something happened and I just thought of like the meanest thing, I would write that shit down. I'd be like, I'm going to give a really bad example because I really can't think of a concrete one that's happened in the past. But let's say someone comes up to me and they're like, oh my gosh, I won this award. That's the thing that happened to me externally. And I would journal about this. Be like, today, this person came up to me and told me this and this. And in my head, I literally was like, what the hell? That's so stupid. They don't deserve it. Like, I definitely deserve that reward. I would write that crap down. I'd be like, I don't get it. Like, this is the thought that I had in my head. And this was my reaction. And then I would write down, but what I actually did was I just told them, that's so amazing. Yay. And that made me feel like shit because I realized I just had the worst thoughts ever that I couldn't even say them out loud. And how could I be saying things like this? And then 2, I had a lot of pressures on me socially that I was able to keep in the bad thoughts and let out just good energy instead. And then this is how the person reacted. Like, I will go through like scenarios like these. And I think this practice that I've done ever since I was little, because this has just been supernatural for me when I journal. I don't actually know if this is normal for people. Like, I don't know if a lot of people journal this way, but this is how I do it. And I do it with many, many scenarios that happened to me in my life. And I analyze them. I do that. And then I talk about it. And I'm like, why did I think like that? What does that say about me? How can I do better? Do I even want to do better? You know, honestly, I fully back myself and I truly believe that that person did not deserve it and that I deserved it. And that's it. It led me to be more accepting and aware of myself, where I just really accepted myself like I would a significant other or a best friend with all their flaws, knowing that this person can be a bitch sometimes. This person is messy sometimes, but I still love them. I did that, but for myself. And when I got to that point, it was just super reassuring because now I know through thick and thin, through all the messy shit that I will do, the messed up crap that I guess I'm willing to do in certain scenarios, I will always still have my back. And the only way I was able to get there was by realizing that it is okay to talk about them and like relish in all the good and bad things that I've done in my life. And a lot of the times what people will do is whenever something bad, weird, embarrassing, just not good happens to you / the way that you react is not good or embarrassing or the best version of yourself that you could have been, they'll just shut it out or they'll just tell themselves like, I'll do better next time, but not really like sit in it. But instead I would just like sit in all of that junk, the mess. So I know my worth. I know what triggers me, where I falter and when I will falter and that I'm not perfect. But I still, at the same time, because I know all the bad stuff, all the dark stuff, I know that where my worth is because I know that there's also still the good stuff and I can balance those things out and see it as a third person perspective and see like myself as I am, the good and the bad. This is just a practice that I would recommend doing and starting as soon as possible. And you don't have to do it with everything, but I mean, just starting it out with a few things here and there, you just naturally will get to a point where you're like, okay, I've seen it all. I've sat in it all. And yeah, like I know it all inside and out. And once you get to the point of like this deep level of observation, you just start accepting it. In the beginning, it might be really uncomfortable to sit in it and you might want to push back against it. But the harder you push back, the harder you fight against it, the longer you're just delaying your path to independence / being less dependent on other people and just accepting yourself and loving yourself more. So I gotta say. All right. The next thing is when something happens to you or you need help, you have questions, or you feel uncomfortable, stop going to somebody else right away. You should wait and handle it yourself first until you realize, oh, like, actually I need help, then go to somebody else. So this is a case of like, oh, maybe something crazy happens. Like sometimes something in work will happen. I would choose to go immediately to my friends and be like, oh my God, guess what just happened to me? And then the other half of the times, I won't even say anything because I'm like, I'm like, I don't need everything to be somebody else's business with me. It's just for myself sometimes. And so even if there's like big things that happen, sometimes I don't tell anybody, and I just like let myself deal with it and handle it and just be like, bro, that fucking sucks. And I'm the only one that is going to know about it. I don't need to tell everybody about it, and I don't need to ask everyone else to make me feel better. It's going to be just fine. So there's that. Or there's times where I actually need help with something, and some people might immediately just go to somebody and be like, hey, how do you like fix this? When you could have just Googled it yourself and taken maybe a little bit more time than you would have to figure it out yourself. And then now you feel that you have more confidence in yourself because you didn't have to rely on somebody else to fix that problem. And by doing this and practicing this more and more, you build this muscle of being able to trust yourself and rely on yourself and know that you can take care of it and that you have valuable skills. And if you don't have the skill yet, that you can eventually pick it up. So if you don't allow yourself to prove to yourself that you can do these things and learn new things and fix it yourself, even if you don't have a clue what to do in the beginning, then you're never going to believe that you can take care of it. And that just really, messes with your trust in yourself and always makes you think, oh, if I can't handle it, somebody else can take care of it for me. That's how you get too dependent on other people. When you build more and more trust and you see that you are a more and more valuable person, you realize you can be independent and you don't need everybody. Okay, last thing. This is also something smaller. It is when you're doing mundane things, which you usually will do by yourself, which is like brush your teeth, use the restroom, do your chores here and there. You're not always doing those mundane things with other people. Some people, what I've noticed is they'll do it while listening to music, watching something, being completely distracted by something else. And what that does is it seems harmless, which it is harmless to a certain extent. And also I do this all the time. I still listen to music while I'm cleaning, spending time doing nothing by myself, but not always. And it's super important to have those moments when you're not distracted while you're with yourself, because then you can actually take a moment to sit in your own thoughts. And sometimes I use the music to actually shut out my thoughts because it's a little bit too much up in here. And so I purposefully have to shut it off by distracting myself. But then there's also, you still need to let room and space and time for your head to actually think and for little conversations to happen in your own head so that you can really get to know yourself better and be okay with your own mind. This is just like learning how to be okay with the uncomfortableness whenever you're alone. And these are just little things that just help like strengthen that muscle until eventually it just gets easier and easier to do bigger things by yourself. And then before you know it, you don't really need to ask anybody for help. You don't need to freak out whenever something big, major happens that like kind of pushes you off and like sets you in a different direction. But I also have to say, and this is a disclaimer of something that I did mention in the beginning. I'm sorry if you can hear my brother in the background. He's playing video games and he's very loud. This is very reminiscent of my old podcast where there's always like some kind of background noise of somebody like screaming, yelling, laughing, coughing in my every podcast. Anyways, it is to be careful of extremities, because I think I got to the point where I was like, I don't need anybody. Like, I really would be fine if I was the last person, like, not seeing anyone, blah, blah, blah. But that is completely false. I would be okay to a certain extent, but you'll always need to have somebody at the end of the day, because like I've said in a million episodes, I think I've said, like, you can literally extract this from like 20 episodes that I've done in the past, but we are social beings, and at our root, we love being surrounded by people, feeling like we belong. It's like a necessity, and it makes life much more enjoyable. It just makes life worth living, like having other people and not just going through life by yourself. It is a key thing. It's not something that I always knew. And that is crazy because back then, if you asked me maybe like 5-6 months ago, I genuinely would have been like, bro, I don't need anyone and I am tired of dealing with people and I do not want to do any more teamwork. I don't want to be around people. Like, it's just too much. I'm fine by myself and I'd rather be by myself. But like now I'm completely in a different, not a completely different headspace, but I'm in a much more normal, healthy center of the spectrum instead of the extremities. And I'm happy I'm here because now I understand that, yes, it's really, really good and amazing to be independent and to know that I will always have my own back. And at the end of the day, if everyone left, I'd be fine. But at the same time, I didn't get to where I was without anybody. I'm here today because of so many people who depended on me and I depended on them, and they gave me so much, and I'm extremely grateful for it. And I love all the people that I have in my life, and I'm grateful for them. And I'm always so excited to see them and be around them and talk to them. I'm at a better place, and I'm learning more and more to ask people for help because I'm realizing that you actually can get way farther if you have a healthy balance of doing things on your own and getting other people to help push you forward and empower you and inspire you. And so that is a place that most people should try to get to. I'm still working on it. Trust me, I'm really working on it because I'm not there yet. And that's it. I really barely made it through this episode. I was just like coughing up a storm a second ago. But yeah. Thank you guys for listening and watching this whole entire freaking year. Did I start this? Yeah, thank you guys for watching it this whole entire year. It's been a year plus of doing these crazy long podcast episodes, and I'm so excited to keep going in the next year. I'm really excited for the next year, but I haven't really processed that it's coming up. We'll see what happens with that. But anyways, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. All good things if you're watching this on YouTube, and if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, don't forget to like and rate the podcast. And I will see you guys next year. Bye. Excel on exes, baby, would you make it alright? Or maybe that much better. If you wanted, you could make it all worth it.